Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. Today we have with us midwife extraordinaire Val Patroni. Welcome.
Hello, beloved. I'm so honored to be here in the hot seat on your special podcast, blowing the minds of your listeners.
So what are your thoughts on homemade formula?
So I think it's incredible. It's, for one reason, like F the system, and really taking responsibility and bringing that power kind of like back to yourself and not putting that responsibility on someone else, in particular, an industrialized department that really only seeks to create customers and, make money off of people who are maybe not as educated or resourced as the next. So I feel like there are several recipes that are out there. I highly, highly recommend, if anyone who's listening does not have Sally Fallon's Nourishing Traditions book, Weston A. Price Foundation, please go ahead and do that. I believe it's page 602, where she has her incredible, I believe it's her and Mary and Nig, I think is her partner, who also wrote that book. Every single ingredient that you need. The basis of the formula, go figure, is raw milk. And I'm sure that's a whole other tangent that maybe we can try to distill down. And I know that there's a lot that needs to maybe be demystified, about all of that. But raw milk being the base. Now, if you think about, we're mammals. So it would make sense that the next best source of milk would be from another mammal. And so like just to pin there really quickly, human milk above all, whenever possible, I feel is also something that is so important to like shout from the rooftops. The issue, and I know the concern with a lot of mothers about sharing milk, and there's milk banks, and I know that those are incredibly expensive, for most to be able to access and receive milk from a milk bank. Also, that milk is altered, it's gone through pasteurization, homogenization, and so like the integrity of the milk and the enzymes are disrupted because of that process of pasteurization with milk banks of human milk. And then if you're just going and you're receiving donor milk, there's actually, I believe it's in every state in the country, Eats on Feeds is like a Facebook that you can always search in the Facebook engine and type in your state. And it's essentially like a forum where a mother can actually post and say, hey, I have a surplus of milk. I don't have room for it in my freezer. I'm located in such and such town. Please let me know if anyone, is interested or is in need of milk. They can come pick it up. Or, on the other spectrum, there can be a mama that goes into that platform and says, I am not making enough milk for my baby, or my baby's having a hard time gaining, or however, there is this presence of lack of sufficient breastfeeding relationship unfolding. Does anyone have milk that they can spare, that they can donate? So I just want to throw
called Eats on Feeds.
Eats on Feeds, EATS, yeah, on FEETS. You can, just like I said, search it in any Facebook, like search there for groups, and it's been a wonderful resource to families that I've had the honor of serving over the years. So mark that down if anyone's listening who wants to explore that resource. And so, yeah, and then back to—
I'm going to interject for 1 second on that. Because after my first, I banked a ton of milk. And then it was gonna, like, you can only keep it for so long. I'm not sure what your thoughts on it. Like, some resources say 3 months, some resources say 6 months, like maximum. So at like the 6 month mark, I was like, or like maybe at like 5 months, I had too much, like more than I needed, which was very different from my second and third, but so I started giving it away. And I had patients that needed milk, and like they knew me, so they're like they know that I like, only eat organic and like I'm so healthy, right? But I'm with you that I think that human milk is a great option, especially unpasteurized when possible. And I think it's important to share. So I think I didn't even know about that group. I wish I had. So that's amazing. Eats on Feeds. And then I say Facebook in general, like go to Facebook if you, and this is for any lady that's like overproducing, but I think you get like, you can post that you have it, but post if you need milk. And you'd be surprised, there'd be like somebody like me who had a bunch of extra milk in my freezer who was like, oh my God, I'm desperate to not throw this liquid gold away. Like, I'll give it to you, sure. Like, come get it, kind of thing.
Yes.
So thank you for that option. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if you've got a really nice established La Leche League group in your area, your La Leche League leaders are generally in the know because they're usually in constant contact, troubleshooting any breastfeeding issues, oversupply, low supply, and likely could ramble off several, you know, families or, you know, women off the top of their head that like, I think they've got an abundance. You might want to connect with that person if you're in need of milk or vice versa.
What's the Leche? I've heard the Leche League.
Oh yes, La Leche League is it's an organization solely dedicated to breastfeeding. And I'm not sure how it's functioning from state to state currently. And, you know, in the times that we're in, how, if things are in person again everywhere, or if they're just virtual. But I can remember with my first daughter, going over to my La Leche League leader's home, and it was just, you know, 10 to 15 of us sitting around in her living room nursing our babies and spending, you know, an hour to 2 hours together with our La Leche League leader who had, you know, maybe a particular topic that day. It's usually a monthly meetup, and kind of going over something that was relative, be it latching, be it oversupply, low supply, co-sleeping, you know, night nursing, clogged ducts, mastitis, you know, all things, you know, centric to the unique and vast, you know, experiences of breastfeeding. And then it inherently creates connection. And so then you end up with some really lovely mom friends that maybe you can go and hang out with and talk about breastfeeding with. And also that La Leche League leader was such a beacon of light in our particular circle, because it was like, she just was this encyclopedia of information and troubleshooting, and just trying to help any one of us, you know, make the right connections and just encouraging us to keep going. And there's just something about sitting in a room with, excuse me, 10 to 15 women who are either having a really great jolly time or are in tears and like struggling so much, but getting to be in a space where you can really bask in you know, just the range of experiences, I found to be very powerful. And hopefully, you know, I'm a couple years past now my last baby and breastfeeding, so I'm not so deep in it right now, but I would imagine that we still have some pretty solid La Leche League resources. I think it's like LLC, maybe league.com or something like that. I'm sure everyone can Google search that and see if you have some chapters that are still active and open in your area. But that's definitely another resource to tap for sure.
Eats on Feets, Leche League, Nourishing Traditions. And I have that book. I didn't even think to look in that.
Yeah.
Homemade breast. And it makes sense. It's like based on the GAPS diet, sort of, you know, like
yes,
the nourishment from the raw milk, which I fed my son actually. And, you know, we have a place near a farm in Connecticut. And I having been a proponent of the GAPS diet, and what it has to offer, know the benefits of raw milk and the digestibility being much, you know, higher than pasteurized versions. I think there's a reason why over 60% of the population has a lactose intolerance. And I think it's a lot to do with how we process our milk. So, you know, you can get like unpasteurized generally at farmers markets, so raw milk, or in the countryside. And then, you know, sometimes you can just get low pasteurization versions, which is better than fully pasteurized versions. But again, there's probably some people listening to this right now that are like starting to well up in like anger or like disbelief that we're proponents of raw milk. But if you look up the GAPS diet and start reading about it, you might also crossover. So, okay. So we were talking, we laid out those 3 resources. You also mentioned like the support that women need. Are there any other sort of like, you know, go get your milk resources or make your own milk resources that you would suggest before we move on to other mother supportive topics?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think you mentioned it. So realmilk.com
Hmm.
is a wonderful resource for those who don't know. You can plug in where you're located and it will show you a list of the nearest raw dairy farms.
Hmm.
And yes, and if you're in the know of where there might be an Amish community, you can just always count on the fact that the lovely Amish are happy to share their raw dairy resources. They're wonderful with their raw milk, raw cheese, raw sour cream, cottage cheese, raw butter. And highly recommend if this is just new or a little bit confronting, to definitely dive in and give it a try researching how beneficial raw milk and incorporating you know dairy products that are from loved and well cared for animals, and that where all of the enzymes are intact, and the powerful healing and nutrient content that actually is present there.
And they're not filled with like stress hormones and toxins and hormones that, yeah, that
Yes.
even if they're organic, they could be still filled with, they still could be filled with stress hormones. Like they still could have been hooked up to one of those machines and like constantly milked in this horrific way. But I don't even want to go into that because again, that's like I'm not a vegan or anything. I'm clearly, like, but I am a proponent of treating animals, humanely.
Yes. And I think, some folks get a little concerned because of like pathogens that are maybe there present in raw milk, and like the main one being listeria.
Yeah.
And have been none, like no studies, nothing with CDC. You can search it all day long, where there have been any connections of a listeria outbreak or like encounter with humans consuming raw milk, but definitely with cheese. So that's different. So like just wanted to make that quick differentiation there, because
that makes sense because cheese sits and sits and sits, right? And it like it's cultured with bacteria. So that would make a bit more sense than raw milk. Like if anybody's tried it, it's done after a few days. Like it's like it goes sour. Which is amazing when you look at the shelf life of the pasteurized versions. They can be in your fridge for weeks and still not go off. Whereas the raw version, like I have it in my fridge for like 3 to 5 days and it goes sour. It is moved on to the next. So it just shows you the difference in freshness.
Yes.
So okay, Val, anything else on that topic of the milk that we can impart to our moms?
Radiant Life.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Radiant Life catalog, Radiant Life. I think that they currently right now have kits for making your own baby formula with utilizing mammal milk. So be that cow, be that sheep, be that camel. Oh
my God.
So that's also another resource I didn't want to forget about mentioning in case anyone is feeling intrigued or is in need of some of these resources, to go ahead and check that out.
I am so impressed right now. This is why I was like, I know just the woman to guide us through this journey. We're going to run out of time because I know you have to move on and Zoom will eventually cut us off, but let's talk a bit about like the anxieties of moms overall these days and like, what you're seeing and what wisdom you want to impart. Because whenever I do one of these sessions, I want our listeners to like walk away feeling empowered and like getting the insight and knowing that like, they are not like, it's not happening to you. You have the ability to take charge and you have power within you and you do not have to rely on outside. So what are you seeing and what would you impart to the women listening?
Wow, I love your sentiment that you just shared and just really echoing that so much, that we do have so much power and we have such like innate intelligence and capacity to really rescue, if you will, ourselves, and to bring ourselves into a reality that actually is nourishing and that serves us and is harmonious. And I think, maybe in just thinking of our, beloved sisters and mothers that are out there in this whole anxiety ridden, like hamster wheel that we're on, with just being bombarded with all this information and all these crises that are just like everywhere that we turn, affecting us, in many ways, some that we may not even be fully aware of. I think a great step is to, really step back and just observe your sphere and your circle, and like, what is it that you're consuming? And I don't mean that just in like, okay, like what's the quality of your water, and like what are you nourishing yourself with food, but really like, what are you consuming and taking in, through your eyes? Like, what are you listening to?
And what information?
Like what even are the relationships that you're consuming? Like, are they really serving you? And are you surrounded by are you surrounded by things that are part of your diet, like about of whatever you're taking in? Are these things, are these relationships, are they pulling you outside of yourself, or are they supporting you and showing you and reminding you to like come and turn back in to where you belong, so that you can
and to where you feel peace? Like, if you have
yes.
an undercurrent of anxiety constantly, like, what's out of sync here, right? Like, who are you hanging out with? Like, what are you taking in from outside? Like, what is not aligning with your truth? And I think anxiety is an amazing teacher in that sense, because it indicates to you that something needs to be addressed.
Yes, all of that. And I think, unfortunately, as sort of like you touched upon this in the beginning of this interview, where like the de-schooling, the deconditioning of I don't know, somebody else knows better, and I can't really trust myself, and that just is continuously reinforced. And especially when we are becoming mothers, right? Like, okay, I have to make sure I do all the tests, and all the tests tell us whether things are okay, and I'm this ticking time bomb until I'm proven innocent in the end. And we're not really given space or permission or encouraged to actually tap into our inner compass in this framework, in this culture. It's more of we are going to take over. Your resources or what you have to offer is definitely not sufficient enough, and someone is always going to be smarter than you and know more than you. And essentially, what does that do? That makes us disconnect from our intuition, from our wombs, from our knowings of what's right, or what we need, and just continuously feeds this whole other industry, because that we need to seek outside for validation. Going inside is never enough. We're always second guessing that, and again, we're always having that be mirrored back to us in our culture, like with our social media, or with the age of information, being inundated with so much information, and how conflicting that is, and how exhausting that is, to really find like, well, what is truth? Like, everything, like one day I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and now today I'm reading this, or I'm learning about this, or seeing this on TV, and maybe I've been completely wrong all along, and if I'm wrong about that, then I must be wrong about this, and let me just go over here, where I don't have to take on so much responsibility and have someone else do it for me.
Yeah, doctor, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Because I feel too overwhelmed to figure it out myself, and we feel too overwhelmed because we're not accessing what is within. And I know that sounds cliche for a lot of our listeners, but it really is. Like, when I feel overwhelmed and there are decisions to make, and I just feel like everything's swirling around, I meditate. I be quiet. I try to be quiet. I try to reduce the amount of things in my schedule, because I know that trying to draw the answers from outside just makes me more confused. And that, I pay attention to, if somebody is giving me advice, like, how does that advice feel? Like, I'm tuning in to like really be like, okay, this feels like the information that I need. I'm aligned with this, or like, I don't know, I'm just going to listen to it and just go with it intellectually. And when we follow things intellectually, I think it's a problem, because we all have to keep in mind that we actually are conditioned and are constantly being conditioned by everything we are consuming as we open up our phones, whether we're on the internet, the things that pop up in search, whether we're on Instagram, Facebook, what we're listening to, every single news article that comes out, we're being conditioned constantly. So I love this. And I want our listeners to know that Val is an amazing guide on all things mama and woman. And I highly recommend you reach out to her if you are seeking advice on your path to baby and thereafter. Val, where can our listeners find you?
Thank you so much for that. Well, currently, you can probably just head over to my website. It's probably the easiest way. You can find me at greenlilymidwife.com. And I have a bunch of information there, tons of resources that you can click on and go down different rabbit holes, regarding childbearing years and so on. And also there's, of course, a little inquiry form if you would like to set up a consultation or seek my guidance if you're in the New England area as a birth attendant, midwife, wise woman, loving support, then I would be honored.
Or virtually, do you do virtual sessions because I'm sure like there are people all over the place that could benefit. If any, like everybody who listened to this, you heard all of the resources that Val rattled off. She did that, and she also is just like this amazing spiritual, like supportive guide. So, if you're ever feeling confused, like she will gently get you back onto the path. So I highly recommend a consultation, whether you're local to her or not. But if you're local to her and you're looking for the best birth experience of your life, then definitely schedule something in person. And I will post Val's information in the notes too. And you can always reach out to us at Naturna Institute if you are having trouble connecting with her for any reason. So thank you for being here, Val.
Thank you. It's been an honor. I'm so glad to have been invited, and big blessings to you. And thank you so much for all your work that you do in the world. And of course, blessings and lots of love to all your incredible listeners. And yeah, until next time.